7.1.
Good evening, and welcome to the last in our present series of Heroes. As regular listeners will know, each week we invite one guest to present their hero to us and another guest to discuss that choice. This week we have the well-known author and Professor of Tropical Diseases, Dr. Emma Reynolds, and her hero is Dr. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, who was born in London in 1836. So, Emma, why choose Garrett Anderson as your hero, or should I say heroine?
Well, for many reasons, actually. First of all, in
7.2.
Good evening, and welcome to the last in our present series of Heroes. As regular listeners will know, each week we invite one guest to present their hero to us and another guest to discuss that choice. This week we have the well-known author and Professor of Tropical Diseases, Dr. Emma Reynolds, and her hero is Dr. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, who was born in London in 1836. So, Emma, why choose Garrett Anderson as your hero, or should I say heroine?
Well, for many reasons, actually. First of all, in 1865, at the age of 29, she became the first woman in England to become a doctor, and so gave other women all over the country the opportunity to also practice medicine.
And that's why she's your heroine?
To my mind, it's not just her great achievement, it's the way she did it. She was a strong and determined character, and nothing stopped her.
What do you mean?
Let me tell you a bit about her childhood. She was born in 1836 in East London, which was a very poor part of the city, and she was one of 12 children. But she went to a good school and decided she wanted to be a doctor. But at that time, it was impossible for women to study medicine. Instead of giving up, she enrolled as a nursing student and slipped into classes for doctors.
Didn't anybody notice?
Well, of course they did, and banned her from the classes.
So what did she do next?
She enrolled in the Society of Apothecaries, or what we'd call chemists or pharmacists today, passed the exams and, in 1865, received a certificate to practice medicine.
So that was the end of the fight?
Not exactly, and this is why I admire her so much. Although she could practice medicine, she was still determined to get a proper medical degree.
But I thought you said that was impossible.
It was in England, but that didn't stop her. She taught herself French and then took a medical degree at the University of Paris. In my opinion, this was a huge achievement.
Definitely a role model for determination and hard work.
Indeed. But she went further. She founded a hospital in London for women, staffed completely by women. This was a first in England, and, by the way, the hospital still exists.
So, how would you sum up your decision to make Elizabeth Garrett Anderson your heroine?
For me, it's her character. Determined, hard-working, courageous and generous, especially to other women who wanted to follow her into medicine. And, of course, her achievements, becoming the first woman doctor, founding a hospital for women, and becoming an example for other women. A great life.
Thank you, Emma. Now I'd like to bring in Dr. Adam Robbins. Dr. Robbins is...
7.3.
I don't think that Garrett Anderson is a great hero. To my mind, a hero should be someone who's found a cure for a disease. For example, someone like Alexander Fleming, the Scottish biologist who discovered penicillin. Apparently, he saw many soldiers die from blood poisoning in the First World War and wanted to find something that would stop this happening. And he did. I mean, penicillin has saved millions of lives. What do you think, Yasmin?
I believe that choosing a hero is a very personal thing. I mean, for me, my grandfather's a hero. But with regard to Fleming, I think he was one of the great 20th century scientists, but not the greatest. Personally, I'd vote for Crick and Watson. Crick was an English physicist as well as a biologist, while the American, Watson, was a biologist and zoologist. Working together, their discovery of DNA has changed the world of medicine.
Absolutely, but what about someone like Florence Nightingale? In my opinion, she's a real English hero. You know, she was the founder of modern nursing. She started simple things like, well, just by getting doctors and nurses to wash their hands between patients. She saved thousands and thousands of lives. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? And what's more, she was also a great statistician and was...
7.4.
I would like to tell you about my hero, the inventor Carl von Linde. Firstly, I'll tell you about his background, then I shall talk about his achievements, and finally tell you why I think he is a hero. So, first of all, some background. Von Linde, who was born in Berndorf in Germany in 1842, was originally expected to study religion, like his father. However, he decided he wanted to be an engineer, so he went to Zurich to study, and then worked as an engineer before becoming a university professor. Now, I'll tell you about his main achievement. Von Linde invented something that we could not live without today: the refrigerator, or fridge. People had used ice boxes for many years to try to keep food fresh and to stop it rotting and going bad. With the invention of the fridge, this became possible to do properly for the first time. In my opinion, von Linde is a hero for two main reasons. Firstly, I admire him for his character. Although he was expected to study religion, he knew he wanted to be an engineer. That must have been very difficult for him and his family. Secondly, I think that the fridge is one of the most useful inventions of all time. It is impossible for many of us now to imagine what life was like before it. Fridges are relatively cheap and reliable, and available for everyone. To sum up, for me, von Linde is a hero because he succeeded in producing something everyone uses.
7.5. 1.
She was born in East London, which was a very poor part of the city.
2.
Madame Curie, who was Polish, lived most of her life in France.
3.
Lancaster University, where I studied, was founded in 1964.
7.6.
Well, I believe a real hero is an ordinary person who does something extraordinary. You know, like that group of blind climbers who conquered Everest. Now, they're heroes, in my opinion.
I disagree, because that's a personal act of heroism. By hero, I mean someone who is respected and admired for doing something that has an effect on the lives of many people.
I agree. A hero has to be someone who has had a real impact on how we live.
Yes, I suppose you're right. In that case, I think I'll vote for Alexander Fleming. His discovery of penicillin has saved millions of lives.
Yes, that's not a bad suggestion. But what about...
7.7. 1.
I'm terribly sorry, but I don't think you're right.
2.
I think you could be mistaken.
3.
I think you could be wrong.
4.
I think you're wrong.
5.
No, you're wrong.
7.8.
Lee and I argued initially about our choice of hero. I had chosen Marie Curie, but Lee had suggested Jonas Salk. We discussed it for some time and then decided to study the effects of both people's work more deeply. Then I discovered how Jonas Salk had developed the vaccine for polio, and that this vaccine, and a later one, eradicated polio around the world and saved millions of lives. So finally, I also chose Salk.
7.9.
So, Lee, it's your turn for a presentation. Who have you chosen?
My choice of hero is Jonas Salk, the American virologist. First of all, I'll give you some background information. Then I'll tell you about his career and achievements. And finally, I'll explain why I think he is a hero.
7.10.
So, Jonas Salk was born in New York City in 1914. Although his parents were immigrants and had little formal education, they wanted their children to be well educated. As a result, Jonas was the first member of his family to go to college. At first, he studied law, but then changed to medicine. It was during his medical training that he developed an interest in viruses. After medical school, he worked with the microbiologist Thomas Francis Jr. to try and discover a vaccine for influenza, or flu, as it is more commonly known. This research was successful, and an anti-flu vaccine was developed. Salk's interest then turned to the disease poliomyelitis, or polio. In 1947, he became head of the Virus Research Laboratory at the University of Pittsburgh and started working on a polio vaccine. In 1952, he tested the first vaccine on volunteers, including himself and his family. In 1955, after further testing, the discovery of a polio vaccine was made public, and Salk became a national hero. This vaccine, and its development later by Albert Sabin, has saved lives all over the world. There are two main reasons why I chose Jonas Salk. Firstly, because his work on both flu and polio vaccines has saved millions of lives. Not only that, but today polio has been almost completely eradicated from the world. My second reason is that Salk refused to patent his discovery and make a profit from it, as he wanted the vaccine to be as cheap and freely available as possible. So, it is the combination of Salk's medical genius and his generosity that, in my opinion, makes him a hero.
$7.11.
Thank you, Lee. That was very interesting. Now some reactions. Suhair, what do you think?
Well, it's true that Salk discovered the first polio vaccine, but it was Sabin's vaccine that was more generally used and saved more lives. So I think that Sabin's more of a hero than Salk.
Interesting. Peter?
Well, I know what Suhair means, but it was Salk that did the first vital studies. Without this work, Sabin could not have produced his vaccine. So, in my opinion, Salk is a great man.
7.12.
Albert Sabin, who was born in 1906, discovered the first oral polio vaccine. It was much easier to vaccinate people, especially children, by giving the vaccine on a sugar lump than injecting them with a needle. Using this vaccine, which is so easy to give, polio has been practically eradicated and millions of lives have been saved.